Hey friends, so this past weekend I finished reading a book that I thoroughly enjoyed, but that also has me thinking a lot of deep things. So it's time for another episode of Let's Go for a Walk with Drex as he just talks out all of his feels, yeah? So Drex here from Drex Factor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today, yeah, I'm not really talking about flow arts now, am I? Before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Flow DNA, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Juggling Calling, Pyroterra Light Toys, Spinballs, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these amazing companies and the work that they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I've got down in the description of this video. And a special thanks to the first non-business friend of the channel, Johnny Howard. Thanks so much for your support, Johnny. All right, you probably already know this route pretty well because it's usually the route that I walk when I have stuff to talk about. I'll see about finding a new route one of these days. So last week I ordered and got a copy of Dave Grohl's book, The Storyteller, which he's been teasing for a while on Instagram, and I'd already read a couple of the stories that he posted on his Instagram account. It was everything that I had hoped for and more. A lot of really amazing stories from a guy who's gotten to be a fly on the wall for some pretty amazing rock and roll in the past 30, 40 years. A lot of really interesting ruminations and meditations on the rock star lifestyle and how he balances having a family as well as being in one of the biggest bands in the world. You know, Dave Grohl is somebody that I actually kind of feel somewhat of a kinship to. For one thing, I've lived in the Washington, D.C. area now for more than a dozen years, and that is where Dave Grohl is from. I've gotten to record in one of the same studios that he did. And, you know, also, too, there's something about, like, his kind of very humble, aw shucks, how the hell did I get here, response to having had the amazing life that he has that I find very relatable. Very frequently, I ask myself the same question when it comes to, like, how did I get here, you know? But there was something that stuck out to me in the book, and it became kind of something that nagged at me more and more as the book went on, and that I realized kind of opened the door to a deeper question that I've actually been wrestling with quite a bit for many, many months, if not years now. So, like, Dave Grohl's story, as cool as it is also this really bizarre kind of failing upward, if that makes sense. Like, you know, he makes what I would really say are only two really active choices in his career. One is to go audition for the legendary DC area punk band called Scream. He aces the audition and winds up at the age of 18 going on the road with the band and touring all over the world as a result. And the second is that after Scream collapses in Los Angeles in 1990, he makes a call to Chris Novoselic and decides to audition for Nirvana. And of course, as a result of that, he winds up having a front row seat to one of the greatest musical revolutions of the 20th century. Now, he did go on to start Foo Fighters after that, don't get me wrong. But Nirvana was really his gateway into becoming the person that he is and the presence that he has in the wider world. As much as the Foo Fighters have their own musical merits, there's not a doubt in my mind that when they got signed, one of the calculations that was being made was, we can market this as being from one of the guys in Nirvana. And through all of his stories of getting to meet all of his absolute heroes in the rock and roll world, and getting to do gigs ranging from gigantic festivals to small intimate affairs in the White House, there was something that kept coming up for me, and that was that, like, you know, his response to all of that, while on one level familiar, also felt incredibly foreign. You know, I wrestle a lot with imposter syndrome, with kind of feeling really conflicted about my position within the community that I'm a part of. And it seems like he doesn't harbor many of those doubts himself. And as much as I feel a kinship with the guy, by reading the book, I also really started to hone in on what some of the big differences were between him and I. For one thing, when it came to his home life, you know, his parents split up in an era when that was still comparatively rare. But at the same time, it seems like he had an incredibly supportive and loving relationship with his mother. You know, I do not have nearly as close a relationship with my parents, and as opposed to his mother, basically giving him the benediction to go out and become a rock star as he dropped out of high school. My own home life was such that everything my parents could do to discourage me from having a creative career, they did. In addition, there's a constant theme going throughout the book where he talks about the adage of fake it until you make it. There are tons of instances in which he essentially either lucks into or talks his way into a situation that's, quite frankly, he just shouldn't have been in the first place. And as a person that really, really wrestles with imposter syndrome, there's a part of me that just goes like, how? But there was something even more insidious that popped up to me as I kept reading the book. I started to ask myself, this is the music industry. This is an industry notorious for being a harbor for people that don't fit in the mainstream, people that suffer from a variety of mental illnesses, people that suffer from addiction and everything. And while I'm glad he never wrestled with addiction, it became impossible for me not to notice that as somebody who does suffer from a mental illness, this was one big difference between him and I. He doesn't seem to be in that spectrum of neurodiversity at all. So where exactly were the people wrestling with these problems? Because they are absolutely in the music industry. And that's when it hit me. Yeah, the guy with the mood disorder in Nirvana is the one who's no longer with us. And this gradually became more and more of a gaping hole in the narrative for me. Don't get me wrong, I was still rooting for Dave as, he was going and meeting Little Richard and Paul McCartney and everything. But at the same time, it felt less and less like this was a story that was going to inspire me personally, because the gap between who I am and who he is kept on growing as I read the book. Don't get me wrong, it certainly seems from the book like Dave is somewhere in the ADD or ADHD spectrum. But as somebody with a mood disorder, it really jumped out to me more and more as I was reading the book. I don't actually think that this is a story that could ever be mine. And that's gotten me thinking about a thing that I have really been wrestling with the past couple years. And that is the difference between systemic and personal barriers. In simplest form, I would present the problem as such. It is absolutely inescapable that there are systemic barriers that make it more difficult for people who come from certain groups to be able to get ahead and to be successful in the ways that they want to in the world. Damn it! So the stabilizer for my phone just broke, so this project just got a whole bunch more interesting. We shall see how long I can do this for before my hand gets tired, shall we? All right, so here's where the rubber meets the road for me. As a person who has a mood disorder, reading through Dave's narrative, it's cool to read and everything, but at the same time, it doesn't contain any insights that I feel like are going to help me achieve the same things that he has, He's not working from the same kind of position that I am. He's not working with the same kind of limitations that I am. And this is something that I've become ever more conscious of, especially as I try to give other people advice on things like starting a YouTube channel or starting up a flow arts business. In a lot of cases, I am coming from a vastly different place than a lot of the people that I'm talking to. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, and it's entirely possible that my story is still one that is inspiring to a lot of the people that are watching it. But at the same time, I know that there are going to be some people that I can't really offer advice to simply because they're dealing with problems that I'm not. And yet at the same time, I think we occasionally give those limitations a little bit too much credit. I think we give them a little bit too much power over us. As much as I feel like I'm getting to a point where I can kind of see the pieces of how this world has been set up to privilege certain people over others, at the same time, there are definitely instances where I feel like we kind of don't give people a chance to still be able to be successful in their own right through it. And it's weird because this actually can work both ways. One of the most common questions that I receive when I do Q&A sessions is people asking, how do I motivate myself to practice or to do this with flow or do that with flow? And it's one of those things that as a person who lives with depression, there's a part of me that every time I get that question, I'm just like, I don't know. I never feel motivation to do anything. And I still get up and I get things done and I still get out to practice. because I trained myself a long time ago not to need motivation. But I feel like giving that message to people who don't suffer from depression is kind of difficult because they haven't encountered situations in which they've had to operate without it before. And now I've actually gotten so far that I'm going to have to turn around and walk back towards home. Oh my goodness, this video is going to be a pain in the butt to edit. So here's the question I'm still wrestling with through all this. To what degree, when we talk about the obstacles that we face in living the life we want to live, accomplishing our goals, etc., does it come down to either there being systemic barriers that make it difficult for people that are coming from the backgrounds that we have to accomplish said goals? To what degree is it helpful to have role models that also work with the limitations that we have and seeing the ways they've overcome them? And to what degree is that a personal journey? To what degree is that asking ourselves, how do I make this happen? How do I make that happen? To what degree do we work to hone our own discipline? Do we work to create our own goals and figure out how to keep ourselves from self-sabotage? I don't know the answer to this, but I do know that reading this book has brought up these questions for me. And I'm going to keep on thinking about it, but I at least wanted to share all that with you all because you never know. It might trigger some answers or questions for you all. And of course, I don't know how I made it this far without saying this, but I probably should. That a lot of this is probably also colored by the fact that I'm a white cishet male. So whatever limitations I'm working with, those are not among them. So it is highly, highly likely I'm going to have a different perspective on this than a lot of people out there, including those of you watching. And with that, dear friends, I'm going to bid you adieu and get to doing some flow, because that's why I left the house after all. Real quickly before I do though, if you got anything out of this video, please make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to help other people find it and to help my channel grow. And of course, a huge thank you, because this video would not be possible without the kind support of these amazing people right here. These are my Flow patrons over on Patreon, and they, along with the wonderful people listed down in the description, helps make this video and all the videos on this channel possible. If you'd like to sign up to help me out in my mission of bringing flow arts and poi spinning to the wider world, and I would really appreciate it if you would, you can do so by heading on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and signing up. There you can get early access to all of my content, as well as a say in what topics I will tackle in the future. So check that out, please and thank you. Awesome, thanks for going on this walk with me, everybody. Please leave me a comment with your thoughts. Let me know what you think about all this. Have you read Dave Grohl's book? What did you think of it? I will go ahead and leave a link to some other vlogs I have done on a variety of topics down in the description, as well as up on screen if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, and have a good one. Peace.